On D-Day, the paratrooper drops went quite poorly. Troops, especially the Americans, were dropped all over the place, with very few getting to their actual drop zones. The combination of a night drop and heavy flak wreaked havoc amongst the flight crews, leading them to put the green light on, causing paratroopers to drop everywhere. One of the worst misdrops was the 3rd Battalion, 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division. They ended up in the area of the village of Graignes, 18 miles southeast from their drop zone. From around 1000 hours on D-Day through to the end of D+1, paratroopers from all units arrived in the village, with a total of 182 men assembled, 12 officers and 170 other ranks. The senior officer was Major Charles D. Johnson, Executive Officer of the 3rd Battalion, the 507th. He made the decision to remain in the village and defend it, as they were so far from their objective and so far behind enemy lines that to have left would have been too risky. Now, the men were mostly from the 3rd Battalion, the 507th, but there were also a few men from B Company, 1st Battalion, 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, who were part of the 101st Airborne, which is just another reminder of how poorly the drop had gone. When the villagers awoke on June 6th, they discovered the paratroopers, and a meeting was called by the mayor. A decision was taken to help the Americans as much as possible. The women started cooking meals, and all available people, even the children, helped salvage equipment and bring it to the perimeter formed by the paras, who had spent most of their time digging in. A mortar platoon dug in around the cemetery and used the church belfry as an observation post. On the 9th of June, other stragglers came in, which included 2 Spaniards who had escaped from a forced labour camp, and Flight Sergeant Stanley Black of the Royal Australian Air Force, who had successfully bailed out of a stricken Lancaster bomber that had been hit during a raid on Caen. On the 10th of June, an enemy patrol was spotted by the men of the 501st. They engaged them at close range and killed 4. Upon searching the bodies, it showed that the Germans were part of 16 Company, SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 38. Sunday the 11th of June dawned peacefully, with no sign of enemy activity. So, with Major Johnson's permission, some of the paratroopers attended church for Mass. During the service, however, one of the women from the village ran in to warn of a German approach, but the first German attack was uncoordinated and only lasted around 10 minutes. At around 1400, the Germans opened up with a heavy barrage of mortar fire, followed swiftly by another assault by infantry against the defensive flanks. The speed of the attack almost succeeded in breaching the perimeter, but Captain Leroy Brummett, who had brought the initial 25 men into the village, quickly moved men and the attack was repulsed. The support fire from the American mortars and interlocking arcs of the numerous machine guns caused heavy losses amongst the Germans, forcing them to withdraw again. The Germans weren't given up, however, and in the evening, the guard positions could hear the sound of heavy vehicles. It was clear that the village of Graignes was about to be subjected to a major assault, so Major Johnson told the villagers to leave. At around 1900 hours, 2 German 88s opened up from nearby high ground. Major Johnson was killed, and the church tower destroyed, taking away the accuracy of the American mortars, and the paratroopers quickly became disorganised. The final German assault, made by a regimental battle group of around 2,000 men from the 17th SS Panzer Division, was met by resistance that had been reduced to a few small pockets, with many American paratroopers running low on ammunition. The Germans quickly overran their perimeter and fanned out into the village streets. Captain Brummett, realising they were vastly outnumbered, ordered his men to break out in pairs and head for Saint-Mère-Église or Carentan. Once the battle was over, the SS men entered the aid station, which had been set up in the church by the battalion surgeon, who was waving a white flag. But upon entering the church, the Germans made him and his 2 medics, plus 14 wounded paratroopers, line up. They were then split up into 2 groups. 5 of the wounded were taken to a nearby pond. These men were then used as live bayonet practice by the SS, who then dumped their bodies into the water. The 9 other wounded men were taken into a field around 4 kilometres away, where they were forced to dig their own grave pit. They were then made to kneel down and were shot in the back of the head before being pushed into the hole. The battalion surgeon and his 2 medics were also shot, with the surgeon's body not being found until spring of 1945. The SS weren't finished there. They rounded up 44 of the villagers and accused them of collaborating with the Americans, so they shot them dead. 2 priests were dragged out of the rectory and shot, and 2 women were also murdered in their beds. Systematic looting of the village then commenced, and on the 13th of June, the Germans poured petrol onto the bodies of the priests and the women and set them ablaze. The fire spread, and it destroyed 66 homes, the boys' school, which had been Major Johnson's command post, the café, which belonged to Madame Bouzière, who had organised the feeding of the Americans, and the church, which had survived since the 12th century. The fire and the fighting had damaged a further 159 homes and buildings. Of just over 200 buildings in the village of Graignes, only 2 houses survived undamaged. Of the 182 paratroopers that entered Graignes, 150 made it back to American lines alive, with the last group of 21, who had been hidden by a French family, arriving in Carentan on the night of the 15th and 16th of June. The decision to hold Graignes more than likely prevented the 17th SS from reaching Carentan before the 101st, which would have made the battle for it much longer and costlier to the Americans. In 1986, on the 6th of July, in the ruins of the village church, a ceremony was held in which 11 villagers, 6 posthumously, were given the award for distinguished civilian service for assisting the men of the 507th. Well, that concludes today's video. I would just like to give a shout out to my dad, who conducted a lot of research and compiled this script for today's video. Today's video would not have been possible without him. Thank you all for watching once again. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you very soon on the next video. Cheery bye.